It began not with a bang, but with a whisper. A subtle, almost imperceptible shift in the tectonic plates of their shared world. She felt it first in the spaces between his words, the hollow echoes where laughter used to reside. His touch, once a symphony of reassurance, now felt like a fleeting brush of a stranger's hand in a crowded room. The silence that fell between them was no longer a comfortable quiet, but a gaping chasm, a void that swallowed every unspoken word, every unasked question. She would watch him across the dinner table, his face illuminated by the soft glow of the candlelight, and see a man she once knew, a man she had loved with every fiber of her being, now replaced by a ghost, a phantom who looked at her, but never truly saw her. His detachment was a slow poison, a creeping paralysis that numbed her heart. Yet her heart, in its stubborn defiance, refused to learn the lesson. It refused to accept that the man she loved was gone, that the love they once shared had become a distant memory, a faded photograph in the album of her mind. She remembered the beginning, the intoxicating whirlwind of their first few months. He was a force of nature, a whirlwind of passion and intensity that swept her off her feet. He had a way of looking at her that made her feel like she was the only person in the world. His eyes a deep, endless ocean in which she could lose herself for hours. He would talk for hours about his dreams, his fears, his deepest desires, and she would listen, captivated by the raw, unfiltered honesty of his soul. He was an open book, and she, a voracious reader, devoured every page, every chapter, every word. They were two halves of a whole, two souls intertwined in a cosmic dance of love and connection. They were inseparable, their lives a beautiful tapestry woven with threads of shared laughter, whispered secrets and stolen kisses. They were, in every sense of the word, in love. But then something changed. The open book began to close, its pages slowly, deliberately shutting her out. The long, intimate conversations were replaced by curt, one-word answers. The passionate embraces became hesitant, almost reluctant. The man who had once been a whirlwind of emotion was now a calm, placid lake, its surface still and unreadable. He started spending more time at work, his long hours a convenient excuse to avoid the suffocating intimacy of their home. He would come home late, his face a mask of exhaustion, and retreat into the solitary confinement of his study, the closed door a physical manifestation of the emotional wall he had built between them. She tried to breach the wall, to break through the fortress of his detachment, but her every attempt was met with a cold, impenetrable silence. She would ask him what was wrong, her voice a desperate plea for understanding, and he would simply shake his head, his eyes vacant, his voice a monotone. "I'm just tired." She felt like she was losing her mind, her world slowly unraveling at the seams. She would lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, her mind a chaotic maelstrom of unanswered questions. Was it her fault? Had she done something to push him away? Was she no longer enough for him? The questions were a relentless assault on her sanity, a constant barrage of self-doubt and insecurity. She started to question her own reality, her own perception of their relationship. Had she imagined the love they once shared? Was it all just a figment of her overactive imagination? She felt like a ship lost at sea, tossed about by the violent waves of his emotional unavailability. With no land in sight, no hope of rescue. Her friends, her well-meaning, concerned friends, saw the toll his detachment was taking on her. They saw the dark circles under her eyes, the hollow look in her gaze, the way her smile never quite reached her eyes. They told her to leave him, to walk away from the man who was slowly, methodically, destroying her. "He's not worth it," they would say, their voices a chorus of concern. "You deserve better." But she couldn't. She couldn't just walk away. She was a moth drawn to a flame, a sailor lured by the siren's song, a prisoner in a cage of her own making. She was addicted to the pain, to the hope that one day, the man she had fallen in love with would return, that the ghost who haunted their home would finally be exorcised. She started to read about it, about the psychology of emotional detachment, about the anxious avoidant trap. She learned that his detachment was not a reflection of her worth, but a defense mechanism, a shield he had built around his heart to protect himself from the perceived threat of intimacy. She learned that his emotional unavailability was a product of his past, a ghost from his childhood that continued to haunt him in his adult life. She learned that their relationship was a classic example of the anxious avoidant dynamic, a destructive dance of push and pull, of pursuit and withdrawal. She, the anxious partner, craved closeness while he, the avoidant partner, feared it. The more she pursued him, The more he withdrew and the more he withdrew, the more she pursued. It was a vicious cycle, a self-perpetuating prophecy of heartbreak and despair. Armed with this newfound knowledge, she tried a different approach. She stopped pursuing him, stopped demanding his attention, stopped trying to break down the walls he had so carefully constructed. She gave him space, hoping that in the absence of her pursuit, he would find his way back to her. She focused on herself, on her own happiness, on rediscovering the woman she was before she had lost herself in the labyrinth of his detachment. She started painting again, her canvases a vibrant explosion of color and emotion. She reconnected with her friends, their laughter a soothing balm to her wounded soul. She started to heal, to piece back together the shattered fragments of her heart. For a while, it seemed to work. He started to notice her again, to see her not as a source of pressure and demand, but as the woman he had fallen in love with. He started to come out of his shell, to let down his guard, to show her glimpses of the man he had once been. They started to talk again, their conversations a tentative exploration of the emotional minefield that lay between them. He told her about his childhood, about the emotionally distant parents, who had taught him that love was a dangerous, unpredictable thing. He told her about his fear of intimacy, his fear of being hurt, his fear of losing himself in the overwhelming tide of another person's emotions. She listened, her heart aching with a mixture of compassion and understanding. She finally understood. It wasn't about her. It was never about her. But the reprieve was only momentary. The old patterns, the old habits, the old fears, they were too deeply ingrained, too deeply rooted in the soil of his soul. The walls went back up, the silence returned, the ghost reappeared, and she was back where she started, a prisoner in a cage of her own making. But this time something was different. This time she had a choice. She could stay and continue to fight a battle she could never win, or she could walk away and save herself. She could choose to be a victim of his detachment, or she could choose to be the hero of her own story. She chose to be the hero. She chose to walk away. It was the hardest thing she had ever had to do, a decision that tore her heart to shreds. But she knew, with a certainty that resonated in the very core of her being, that it was the right thing to do. She packed her bags, her hands trembling, her heart a heavy stone in her chest. She looked around the home they had once shared, the home that had once been a sanctuary of love and laughter, now a mausoleum of broken dreams and shattered hopes. She took one last,